Welcome to SRG Insights, where we answer your questions about sales, sales management, and sales training. And today's question is,
how do you prevent a prospect going silent after sending a proposal?
So that's a really great question, and one that I think anybody who's been in sales has ultimately run into and been frustrated by in the past. And it's a scenario where we spend all of this time crafting a great response, a brilliant proposal. We put a lot of work into it, we send it over, and we don't hear back from the client. And then, a few weeks to months later, they finally follow up and say, we've gone with another provider, or we've chosen another option, or maybe even worse, we decided not to move forward with the project altogether. So the first thing when we are considering this question is we really need to think about our time as a sales professional and putting a premium and a value on the time that we're engaging with the customer, and make sure we make it clear to them that if they're going to engage with us, there has to be some give and take. There has to be some payback. So we should stop allowing ourselves to be treated by like a Labrador retriever, where they're throwing the ball and we're fetching it and we're bringing it back, and then they throw it again, and we do whatever they want until they ultimately say yes or no. So one of the things that we can do to respond to that is to make sure before we send a proposal, we adequately qualify that deal. So we should make sure this is business we want to go after, business we think we can win, and that we've really outlined our solution to understand when are they going to make the decision, who's going to be involved in making that decision, what are the decision criteria they're going to use, and if we can, find out how many other people are competing and who they are, and kind of what's most important to them in terms of making this decision and ultimately choosing a partner. So, we may get some pushback when we ask these questions, and I think we should really engage and talk to our contacts in the organization and say, we've found that we can be most successful serving you when we're able to answer these types of questions. And in fact, when we engage with some of your individuals to learn more about the organization. So we'd actually like to speak to the following individuals. Can you help us arrange those meetings? They may say no, but to the extent that we can penetrate and really expand our footprint, we'll be more successful in that. The next step is really to preview any solution that we're going to send over before we send the proposal. So any solution presentation or proposal should include at least the following components. What's our understanding of your situation and the problem? So here's what we learned through all that research we did. Here's our proposed solution and the components that are going to help you solve that problem. This is why we're different than maybe some of the other options that may be out there, of course, without bad-mouthing the competition. And here's some proof or some support for those claims that we're making, which might be a reference or a case study or a referral, some data or metrics that we're providing to substantiate our solution. So what this allows us to do is get direct feedback before we send that proposal and ask the question, did we miss anything? Do you see any gaps or concerns? And ultimately, and maybe a little harder question, but hey, could you tell us how we compare currently with any other options you're considering? How would you stack us up, or how would you rank us compared to the other options? So it'll really tell us if we're on track and if we have any gaps to close. So if we've done that, now we know really how in alignment we are with the solution, and we're able to potentially move forward and send over that proposal. So some of the things we should do before we send it is to make sure we're crystal clear on when they plan to make a decision. So back to our earlier questions, the timeline that's involved. And we don't like to send any proposal unless we've bookended that with a follow-up meeting to review it with the key stakeholders. So we'll say, hey, we're happy to put the work in and invest, and in fact, we'd like to share some insights with you about what we found. But in order to be able to do that, we'll have to book or be able to book a meeting to review that with the key stakeholders that are going to be involved in making the decision. When can we do that? Can we put that on the calendar now? So again, I think the idea of lobbing over a proposal, hoping that they review it and get back to us, is really leaving a lot up to chance. And it lowers our chance ultimately of being successful. If we're able to set that up in advance and say, if we do this, here's what we're expecting, because we're sales professionals and we're investing in putting time in, now puts us in a little different position and hopefully a little bit more on par with the customer. And we'll up the chances that we'll actually get that final review meeting with the stakeholder and leave a lot of less up to chance in terms of when they'll make a final decision and who they will choose. So the final piece is really putting a value on the time that you invest. If you ever find yourself asking the question, well, we might as well respond because we really don't have any other big proposals in the pipeline, I would say, stop that right now. Go out and do more prospecting, do more research, go back to your loyalty clients. There are a lot of other high value activities you can do than just responding to a blind RFP or a blind request with a proposal that likely isn't going to be accepted anyway. So go out and do those other activities, or put the time in to a proposal that you believe and know that you can win, and that'll up your chances. Good luck and thank you.